bombarded by thoughts. They're like weather patterns in the mind. There are sometimes nice, clear, sunny days, but there are an awful lot of cloudy days, tumultuous days, rainy days, turbulent, stormy weather. And again, challenge is, how are we to be in relationship to all of that stuff that's driving our lives and our narrative of who I am? And so when you get in touch with what awareness really is, then the first thing you realize is that those thoughts are not me, and they're not mine. They're just like weather patterns. They're impersonal weather patterns in the mind. So then you can observe them like a scientist. Like, what is the nature of this thought? Where does it come from? I mean, they come like bullets, fired out of a machine gun. They're very, very fast, so to speak. That's quite a militaristic image. But, another way is bubbles coming off the bottom of a pot of boiling water. If you've ever watched a pot of boiling water, say a glass pot, the bubbles tend to nucleate at the bottom. And then they go through the water and they go poof at the surface. So the thoughts are very similar, and that's where I use, and other people often use this term, the thoughts self-liberate. You don't have to get rid of them. People misunderstand meditation as, oh, I just sweep all my thoughts away and then I'm in this like nirvana. What you'll get by trying to sweep all your thoughts away is a headache at the most, because there's no way to sweep your thoughts away. They will get you every time. And then you can have millions of thoughts about mindfulness and meditation, and those are just thoughts too. They're not meditating. But when you see that you're not your thoughts, then you can watch them in this kind of impersonal, more sort of, if you will, observing way, with kindness, with self-compassion, because a lot of them are heavily loaded with negative emotion. And you can see that if you don't touch them, if you don't do anything with them, if you don't get caught in them, they self-liberate naturally in awareness. The awareness is like touching a soap bubble. It's fun for kids and fun for adults too. Soap bubble, and you touch it, and it just goes. So I love that image. The thought is the soap bubble, and the emotion too. That's valencing the thought, and you don't need to do anything with it, because your awareness is like, it's not even a finger. It's not corporeal. The awareness, just the embracing of it, or the arising of it, like in the sky, it goes poof all by itself. And don't take my word for it. This is something that when you sit down and you begin to watch, you'll see this is not rocket science. You don't have to sit in a cave for 30 years to have that kind of experience. All you need to do is, in some sense, get out of your own way. Now, I'm not saying that's easy. That's really hard. But if you can have moments when you get out of your own way, then you'll see that a lot of the stuff that we get so caught up in, it's like, it's a mirage. And that doesn't mean that the thoughts aren't valuable. I mean, I think it was Einstein who said, if you have one or two really good thoughts in a lifetime, you're ahead of the curve. Paraphrasing. So most of our thoughts are actually kind of mundane or imprisoning, but thinking is a very, very, it drives imagination, drives creativity. So maybe we need to just create a bigger arena for our thoughts and watch how they not only self-liberate, but also inform each other in some sense. And then all of a sudden you see something that no one in the history of humanity has seen before. And you apprehend it. Because something is being revealed to you. I won't say you're making the connection, but somehow a connection gets made, and that's called an insight. And you're going to have profound insights. Science is, sort of storied, wonderful stories of eureka moments, insight, and it's usually not by driving, thinking, and banging your head against the wall. It's when you've thought as much as you've gone as far as thought can take you, and then you rest in awareness. Maybe sometimes it's in sleep, or you wake up out of sleep and then,
All right. So that's John Kaplan's. I'm going to skip. There's some other resources if you're interested. Anderson Cooper has done some investigation of this at a personal level, and he shares some of that, and my next slide has some links for that. So we've already chatted a little bit about that sense of being very present and aware. I want to just touch briefly before we go into our example that the research is showing that there is this link, as I mentioned earlier and was shared earlier, between stress and diseases, both physical and mental, including cancer, arthritis, depression, anxiety, autoimmune disorders, that we know that stress exacerbates those conditions. We also know that individuals who have what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, often experience this early stressful experience. They also have a much higher rate of these diseases. And so what the research is starting to show is that mindfulness can actually change the brain. And so I found this to be a very interesting study. I'm going to try and just paraphrase the essence of it. They looked at 3 different kinds of mindfulness training. So the first type is called attention or presence, and I have more specific examples I'll give in just a moment. The second type, compassion or affect, and then the third type is developing social intelligence or perspective, and that's kind of like an empathy aspect. Each training started with 3 days of intensive retreat, then it was followed by weekly group instruction, daily home practice, and people were able to use various online tools or apps in order to support them. So they took 322 healthy adults, 197 were women, between the ages of 20 and 55, and they were in 4 different groups. Group 1 and 2 began with the presence training, then group 1 went on and had the affect and perspective training. Group 2 received identical training, but they just flipped the order of them. Group 3 went through affect training, and group 4 was their control group. Then they looked at them, they did functional MRIs and brain images to see if there were changes pre and post intervention. So what are we talking about with these different models? Presence is what I'm going to do with you in just a moment as an exercise where you're often engaged in something along the lines of a body scan. You might be doing a walking meditation. The core practice involves breathing. And it might also be used to heighten your awareness of the senses. So we're going to focus, I'm going to start with a little bit of sound, and then I'm going to take you into an activity connected to taste. So we'll be doing within that core category of meditation. Affect training is focused on what we call loving kindness meditation. And it basically involves kind of a guided meditation where you are thinking about particular people in your life that you might know or beyond your life that are like in your city or your state or in your community. And it isn't necessarily that you're going to that person and saying these things. It's that you're engaged in that meditative process of wishing them, may you be healthy, may you be safe. So it's like good wishes that you're doing mentally. You start often with more immediate people in your life, and then you extend that out. And it's often done through a guided meditation. In this case, they used pairs for guiding them through that. And then the perspective training is where you're basically engaged in, again, a guided process of thinking about somebody else's point of view. So it's focused on that empathy aspect. So what's really interesting, I'll kind of give you the quick bottom line, is that when they looked at the brain results, they found that the type of meditation that was done with the group resulted in different kinds of changes to the brain. So that not all meditative experiences are the same. And so the presence training, that's the breathing, the body scan, things of that nature, they found the portion of the brain where there was change was often connected to attention, executive function, okay? If they looked at the social domains, such as compassion, perspective taking, they didn't see any change if they hadn't done that type of intervention. But when they did that intervention, then they saw that those portions of the brain, and they also changed in their ratings of compassion to various situations. So there was kind of a report out by the individuals as well as the changes within the brain. And then the final piece was the perspective instruction. And they found that, again, that's the portion of the brain. We have something called theory of mind, where you can understand different perspectives from your own. And they found that those were the kinds of changes that were represented. So, again, bottom line, doing different types of meditative practice result in different physiological kinds of changes. But also what's interesting is regardless of what the participants did, they felt less stressed and reported feeling less stressed after they had had all three types of intervention. So just walking away from this, understanding that different types of meditation may have different outcomes, and that you might want to be informed about the choice if you're interested in something like this. I've provided you with a number of links. There's Mindfulness in School, big movement there, Mindfulness in Business, and Mindfulness in Communication. But I want to leave us enough time to be able to engage in our practice.